Hey everybody, and welcome to another video. I am Mike B, and today we're going to be talking about battle sights versus target sights on rifles. So this is something that Henry from 9 Hole Reviews was talking about on his PTR 91 or H&K G3 500 yard practical accuracy video, and this is only a couple days ago. And so he and I were talking about this a little bit, that it just seems like in the US that we're so used to target sights on our battle rifles and just for shooting competitions that we really overlook and discount the purpose and the practicality of an actual battle sight. Now we'll talk about kind of what the difference is. This is going to be a very, very basic explanation video, and it's going to be a very overviewed video, so it's not going to be nuanced and detailed. So again, if I miss something, it's not because I'm intentionally leaving it out, it's just because it's not going to be pertinent to the overall conversation. I know there's different models, different styles of sights, everybody's got their own thing. We're going to be talking about the absolute basic level, and we're going to incorporate that with military surplus firearms and the civilian versions of them. So yeah, it starts out where you've got what's a target sight, which is most of the time in the US it's going to be an aperture, which is just a hole or peep sight in the back. Most of the time they're at the rear of the receiver. So for example, on the M16, the aperture is back here, and I'll be showing you close-ups of what these sight pictures look like. I'm just going to give you an explanation of kind of what my definition of these sights are. So target sight's going to have an aperture right here and some sort of front post or sight picture in itself. It helps with these protective fins to kind of line it up. And basically what you do is you just put the post at a perfect 6 o'clock up and perfectly center. Your eye naturally wants to center the front sight picture into that circle, into the aperture in the back, and then you focus on the front sight and your target, because that's why it's also called a ghost ring sight, because it just kind of, your eye doesn't focus on the aperture because it gets blurry, and you focus on the front sight being lined up, and you don't really have to look at the rear sight as much, but there's a lot going on. You actually have to focus. A lot of people have to close one eye to use these sights properly. They are a lot more effective, in my opinion, at longer distances when you have time to take a shot. At closer range or intermediate range up to about 300 yards, they're not as ideal in my opinion. And I was of the opinion for many years that these were the best sights in the world because I grew up using them. It turned out to not exactly be true once I started using other sorts of sights for different purposes. So we're going to talk about the adversary of the M16 and what a battle sight is versus a target sight. A battle sight is going to be something like the AK series weapons have. It's going to be forward of the receiver or on the barrel most of the time. We'll get to an exception here in a second. And it's just going to be a notch, like a notch. It's either going to be an inverted V notch, or it's going to be like the AK where it's a square with a front sight post that also fits into that notch. You make the sight picture, the front sight post perfectly level, so you don't have the notch anymore. You just make this all one thing, and you kind of look over the sights. You don't look through them as much as you would for a precision sight like a aperture sight or something like that. You kind of just line this thing up really quick and you look over the sight, and it's a lot easier to shoot with both eyes open so you can see. And it's also, in my opinion, in my experience, a lot easier to acquire from a position where you're not already shouldering your weapon. It's just kind of natural just to line it up. You can keep both eyes open and then you just kind of pull the trigger. It's not as precise, I would say, at longer distances, because that front sight post a lot of times is a lot bigger than your target. So it kind of, you have to judge a little bit and make some Kentucky windage and Tennessee elevation adjustments. But overall, it can still be done for sure at longer ranges with these battle sights. Now, a sight that is very often overlooked in the US, and this is really well liked by a lot of countries in the world because they use this platform, or a version of it, is the H&K style turret sight, the rear sight. Now this incorporates both a battle sight and a precision sight, like an aperture, in the same sight thing. So like Henry was talking about in his video, I'll zoom in on these in a little bit and we'll talk about it. This one for 100 meters has got an inverted V notch, but you're supposed to put the entire front sight, that big circle, you're supposed to put that within this notch, like I'll show you. I have a custom front sight post. That's a little thing with crosshairs for more precision shooting at longer distances, because this thing can reach out and touch a target at 500 yards, no problem, as Henry demonstrated. But anyway, so this incorporates that, and then when you get up to 200 meters, it starts to become a little more advantageous. You'll probably have some more time to react at 200 meters, which is why they went with an aperture, which is a really cool design. A lot of people don't like this. A lot of people think that the 100-meter sight picture is too big and they don't understand how to use it, but it's a really quick acquisition. I think Henry's gonna be making a video doing reflexive fire or more speed shooting, which is gonna be really interesting. It can be done with this thing because of that. I have the same style sights that come on SIG 556s, the Swiss turret sights. They're a version of the H&K sights. And that's what I like to use for, tactical shooting, stuff like that, because it's so easy to acquire. You just put the whole front sight post in there up to about, 100 yards, 100 meters, and you're going to be hitting your target most of the time if you know what you're doing with the fundamentals and whatever. So let's go take a look at these quick sight pictures really quick, just to show you what I'm talking about. All right, you'll have to excuse the kind of shaky, but this is what it looks like when you're looking through an aperture on an M16 variant rifle. So you've got the front sight post you see right there. This one's set really low for whatever reason. It required it to be that low to 0. And then you get the little fins, and your eye naturally, like the camera is actually doing right now, kind of makes the rear sight into a ghost ring, or it's kind of blurry. So this is how your sight picture should look, and then you can see your target is going to be in line with your front sight. But that's how this sight works, where your eye wants to center this thing like it is right now, and I'm trying to not be super shaky. So this is what a target sight looks like. They're very precise. You can get really close to hitting targets at long distances because of the way these are designed, but they're actually not as fast, in my opinion, to bring up. All right, we'll move on to the AK really quick, and then we'll show you the G3. So now we've got the AK variant. This is just the standard battle sight. And you'll see that our eye relief is actually a lot longer than it was on the M16 because we are looking farther back from the actual rear sight. Our face is going to be about 8 to 12 inches depending on your sight picture and your style behind the rear sight, and then with a aperture variant it's going to be like 2 to 3 inches behind the rear sight. So you see this, that you just put that, I'm trying to be steady, you put that notch, or that front sight post in the rear notch like that and make it flat, and you can also use the fins that are on the front sight to kind of line up the shot as well. But it's a lot easier to just look over the top of this, acquire your target, pull the trigger a couple times, eliminate the threat, get back down, and you don't really have to focus on anything. Your eye just naturally goes, okay, this is what I need to see, and I'm actually looking at the target just over these sights. So that's how those work. So this is the G3 sight, and it really doesn't want to focus. As you can see right here, you've got the battle sight and the entire front sight post, which again, I have a custom sight in there. You can see a little crosshair. Normally it's just going to be a post in the center of that bigger circle, but we'll try and make this work and get the camera to focus. The human eye naturally focuses on this. It's kind of like the AK, where you just look through and you line up the entire front sight like this. Sorry, I'm being shaky. And then use the post to kind of get more precise with that shot. But you're still just pretty much drawing and then pulling the trigger. Now, when you get up to 200 meters, you've got an aperture in here, which makes it really precise, and it's not going to focus at all. Yeah, sorry the camera sucks, but you get the idea, right, with the front sight and the way that's shaped. And then you've got either the aperture or the combat sight, the battle sight, 100 meters. And this is actually the one that I was telling you that I have on the Swiss SIG 556R, and it's really effective and really quite consistently accurate at 100 yards, just doing reflexive fire. So all right, we'll get back to the video. So now that you've kind of got more of a guess, I mean, you've probably played video games, so you know this already, but for those that didn't, that's, the video games are pretty accurate when it comes to sight pictures. It looks a little bit different in real life because obviously you seeing something in person is going to be a lot different than a 2D image on a screen. So we're going to talk about one more style of sight that's kind of very unique to this specific rifle, but there's actually a couple more rifles that are very well known that have this kind of sight, and that's what's going to be like what's on the Japanese Type 99 Arisaka rifle. So this is going to be an aperture placed forward of the receiver, so it's going to have a longer eye relief. And then you've got the same style, you've got the fins right there, but instead of having a front sight post, you've got an inverted, or not an inverted, it's an inverted V, some people call it. It's also known as a barley corn, which is going to be a really fat looking triangle, basically. Now, the whole point of this sight was to be precise and yet be a combat sight. And this is a really, it's awkward if you haven't ever used them before, but I've never met anybody that brought it up to their shoulder and didn't just say, wow, that was really easy to acquire. Like really easy, and it's very comfortable to find, look at where you're aiming. You can see your target very clear, even though barley corns, I usually don't like that style of sight because it does cover up your target too much. The relief on this and the size of the barley corn is actually enough to allow you to make precise shots. I've shot at 500 yards with this thing standing up and was hitting the target consistently. I think I don't know if I got that on video or if I was doing the 5 on the video. That was a few years ago. Definitely need to take this girl out and get some more footage now that I've got some more people watching than I did like 5-6 years ago. So I'll be remaking a lot of old shooting videos this year thanks to, you know, the crowdfunding from Patreon and channel members, which I'll talk about at the end. But yeah, because of that, we'll be doing a lot of shooting. We'll make a bunch of ammo for this, etc., etc. But these sights are kind of a hybrid, and you would think that it would be really hard to see through the aperture, but they've got it so it's large enough to be really easy to acquire, and the entire sights are small enough to be able to be precise, and also your eye just naturally wants to line this style of sight up. Now, another rifle that's very common in the surplus world that has this style of sight, or the ability to have this style of sight, is the 1903, the U.S. rifle model 1903, or better known as the Springfield, right? Those are the few styles that I've seen, and mainly what I found is that people in the U.S. tend to like these target sights, and rarely do you find somebody that's ever shot over 100 yards, because a lot of people, most gun owners in the U.S., they just use it for hunting, and they go out once a year with the scope or something like this, and even in competitions, a lot of competitions are at 100 yards, which I don't understand. When you start getting out to 400, 500, even to 1,000 yards, which is a real, I mean, you have to know what you're doing to even come close to hitting stuff there. These people, they prefer the target sights, and they just totally write off battle sights and their accuracy past 100 yards, which it is possible to do. It's just you have to stabilize a little bit differently and take a shot. So anyway, that's really all I've got. It's not really a, you know, it's kind of a scatterbrained mic video, of course, but hopefully I get the main point across for the people that might not understand kind of what different sights are made for, what they were designed for, why they're still being used. The United States absolutely loves super precise target sights on all of their combat weapons. That's why, you know, the backup iron sights still on M16A4 or an M4A1, they're going to be the flip up aperture sights with the front sight post being the front sight post with the fins, the protecting fins on it. So very interesting. Who knows? And the AK's got their thing, but to me an AK is a lot easier to bring up and pop a couple rounds off, hit your target and come back down than it is to have to align and kind of like do the focusing thing on your target that you have to do with an aperture sight. Now this sight is again different because you put the entire front sight in the rear aperture and you pull the trigger and you're going to probably hit your target. So all these sights work differently. They can achieve the same effect. You just have to train with them. So anyway, that's all I've got. I think we'll just wrap it up there. I'll probably, if you got any more questions on this particular topic, throw them in the comments and I'll try to make separate videos on that because I think it's an important topic for people that are either just getting into it or wanting to learn about something different that they can probably still, you know, be proficient with it, but it might, you know, there might be myths surrounding the effectiveness of the site. Anyway, that's how I'll wrap the video up. Now, I want to thank the sponsors of this video, who are my Patreon supporters and my channel members. I brought them up earlier. So crowdfunding is a really cool thing that allows me to do videos that I would not be able to otherwise just afford funding out of pocket like I have been for almost 10 years now, which is fine because I'll still make content, but it's the quality of the content and the ability to make content on stuff like, you know, XM16E1 clone, other rifles to teach you about history things in general, like going out to the range. Ammunition, especially this year, costs a lot of money. So crowdfunding helps offset that. We're going to be doing ballistic tests, body armor tests, you name it. It's going to be a really cool year. Last year was awesome. I got to do so much content that I never thought I'd be able to afford to do because of crowdfunding. So that's really cool. If you want to check that out and you want to support the channel, you can do that by clicking the link in the description or clicking the join button below this video. $5 a month or more on either platform gets you into my Discord server as well, which is a really fun time. There's a lot of people on there and we have a really good time. It's very interactive and very informational too. There's a lot of information that goes around people's new acquisitions, ideas for videos and stuff like that. So anyway, if you want to do that, that would be great. I really appreciate my current patrons and my past patrons. You guys are awesome, and channel members. You guys are awesome and have been making this a dream come true. I've been wanting to do this for years and it's finally happening. So anyway, if you can't support the channel financially, but you still want to support my work somehow, that's totally fine. I get that. You can do that by liking the video, you know, giving it the old thumbs up, subscribing if you have not already, and commenting with what your thoughts are, because that favors, or YouTube favors comments in the algorithm, but that'll probably change next week. Who knows? But as of right now, that helps. And the best way to do is just share this video out with people that you think might be interested in it. Start up a conversation, do all that stuff. All that being said, if you don't want to support me and you just don't like me at all, you already have supported me by watching this video. So thank you too. That's all I've got. We'll see you on the next video.